Okay, well, welcome everyone to Real Balance webinars and to the monthly coaching mastery. We're going to be taking this class, if you want to call it a class, a series of webinars to hopefully help you really deepen your craft as a coach. We're going to be meeting each Monday for 10 months, and I really want to thank all of you for jumping on board with this. Speaking of jumping on board, let me admit a whole bunch of people that are starting to show up here on time. So thank you all for being here. And want to let you know that this is all brought to you by Real Balance Health Coach Training. We are the leader in health and wellness coaching and have been for decades. I'm actually one of the members that founded the National Board for Health and Wellness Coaching, and we're fully approved by the NBHWC, of course. But we've also been approved for many years by the International Coach Federation, and we are a level 1 program. So please, if you want to further your education as a coach, please look into the offerings that we have. So I'm going to be admitting some more people here probably and getting distracted by that a little bit here at the beginning. But then I really want to get going and really get into this topic of structure. I love to say that structure is your friend. Never make it your master. And hopefully your structure is not as solid as the stone here of the Grand Canyon, which I was really fortunate enough to see just last week for the very first time in my life, which was quite mind-blowing. Went there after the Art and Science of Health Promotion Conference. So structure is important, to say the least. But how do we want to work with it? How do we want to really let it work for us, not against us? So first of all, I've got this wanted poster up because I'm going to be doing a coaching demo toward the end of the hour here, and I need a client. So what I would love to have is one of you to volunteer to work with me for about 15 minutes. Hopefully we'll be able to demonstrate a little bit about how structure might work, even in a real short demonstration. And what I'm also very happy to do, because I always say I love to have demos really be all about real play instead of role play. So to make it real, I'd be happy to do 2 follow-up coaching sessions with you, half-hour coaching sessions with you, at no charge, and would love to have a volunteer. So who would like to be? Oh, I've already got Celeste here offering to be a client. Let me go ahead and unmute everybody. Let's see. And I'm going to be asking you to participate in the session here. Going to be looking forward to your participation, to your questions and so forth, to your suggestions or things that you want to add in. But we are going to have to move along a little bit with the content so that we have time for that coaching demo. So Celeste, if you could take yourself off mute and just tell me what you would like to focus on, because I do like to kind of screen my coaching demo clients so that it's an appropriate focus for the work that we're going to do together. So okay. Celeste, would you go ahead and speak up then and tell me what you'd like to focus on?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, great.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I think what I'd like to focus on is I'm interested in getting back to my coaching roots. I've found that I've been in a large corporation and not really doing a lot of one-on-one or group coaching. I've been promoting a platform, and I'm having a hard time getting back to my own structure, my own self-care around coaching and learning, getting back into classes and gaining that knowledge. It's been a challenge finding, I guess I hate to say the motivation because I don't coach on motivation, of finding that kind of structure to get back into individual coaching, to change jobs.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, may I ask, may I make a request for our focus there? You mentioned
Yes,
self-care.
yes,
Uh, in the time that we've got together, could that kind of be the focus within the focus there for you?
yes, that would be a
And how that
fabulous
might be related
focus.
to?
Yes.
Okay, super. All right. So if you could tread water until we get to the point where we're going to do the coaching demo, I'll look forward to working with you then. Okay.
Okay,
All
perfect.
right.
Thank
Okay. So please, yeah, please go ahead and keep yourselves on mute if you have background noise and all that kind of thing. But when you want to participate, use the raised hand function. I'm not going to be monitoring the chat. I can't do a good job of producing a webinar while I'm distracted by watching the chat. But you can, as the old comedians used to say, talk amongst yourselves. Be happy to do that. But um, when you want to get my attention, just use that raised hand function and take yourself off mute and speak up. All right. So let's go ahead then and kind of get on with the show. And here we go. So before we even get into structure, one of the things that I am really keen on about coaching is that it's really more about how to be than it is about what to do. I really firmly believe that after all the years I've been coaching. And so your own way of being with people, your own coaching presence, who you are and how you come in to that coaching session, um, it's not only going to affect um, you, but your client as well, because the coaching relationship is the bottom line. I mean, we can have all kinds of different methods and all sorts of different techniques and so forth, but virtually all the work that's been done, all the research on both psychotherapy and coaching keeps on saying the same thing. It's all about the coaching relationship. It's all about the coaching alliance, as I call it. So for me, the first part of structure is building the coaching alliance. And it starts from the very moment you meet somebody, when they're just talking with you on the phone or in person or whatever it might be. And you're trying to discover, is coaching the right thing for you? And are you the right coach for them? And it goes from there. And you're continuing to build that coaching relationship, of course, not just in that first session, but on and on, session after session. So, what happens when coaching structure is lacking? Let me just go ahead and throw that question out to all of you real quick. Just throw up a raised hand function indicator there. I'll call on you and hear what you have to say. What do you see happening? What do you already know? Maybe one of the reasons you signed up for part of this webinar series is to find out more about it. What do you see happening when there isn't enough structure? Yeah, Celeste, go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. I see
Yeah.
that the focus starts to go awry, and sometimes if my client if it's hard to talk about what their focus is, they tend to go off on a tangent another way. It's very easy for me to get pulled off track with them, especially
Yeah.
if it's about holding them accountable to something they said they were going to do.
Okay. So, it might be the rabbit hole, getting in the weeds, all the other expressions we've got for it. Um, Certainly, that's the way people's minds think. We do go off on tangents so easily. Yeah. And then the lack of accountability because we're not, making sure that that happens. Our coaches, or rather our clients, really hope that they can have firm accountability processes to help themselves be accountable to themselves. They're really looking forward to that, even though it might not be apparent at first. Lisa, you had something to add as well.
I was just going to say, when this has happened to me, what I've noticed and learned is that it becomes more of just a conversation
Right.
without the structure.
And would you make the distinction there? It becomes more of a social conversation instead of a coaching
Exactly.
conversation. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Doesn't feel good.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you start sounding Start sounding like a couple of friends at a coffee shop or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. What else shows up for all of you when there's sort of a lack of structure? Yeah, Red, go ahead.
Well, and I think of structure, just like the human body, we have structure, we have bones and muscles that hold our body together. Without that, we fall apart. So with structure, it keeps us on a systematic. And if the coach suddenly loses sight of where they're at, they have that structure to fall back on, and it keeps it going in a nice uniform manner.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I love how, well, let me just pick up on what you said about how the body falls apart. The coaching session kind of falls apart too, doesn't it? Yeah. And like you said, we go back to it as sort of a guide to follow, and, always return to that. Yeah. So definitely lack of structure is going to end up with a lack of focus. That's probably the biggest thing that we see. Also, well, and the way that I kind of talk about some of that, getting off the tangents and so forth. Part of it is that, but part of it also is what I call reporting instead of exploring. The person is just telling you what they did, right? Here's what I ate. Here's how I was active. Here's who I got together with over the weekend. And they're not exploring. They're not questioning. They're not wondering what's going on here. And they're kind of meandering. When I've listened to hundreds and hundreds of recordings, as you might imagine, and helped clients and coaches review their recordings in mentoring and some of our advanced classes. And what I found is that when we don't get off to a good start, when we have that very vague question, that is almost more just the connecting part of coaching rather than the beginning of the actual coaching session. That very vague question, but well, so how was your week? Type of thing. And it doesn't go from there into what do you really want to work on today? There's a lot of meandering. The other thing that ends up happening is when there's not enough structure, we process and process and process forever, and there's not enough time to set up what we call next steps. What are the things the person's going to be working on between now and the next time we get together? And that lack of time, you end up doing it poorly. Maybe you just recommit to the same old thing. Also, you don't have time then, or maybe you don't really, with that structure, get started early enough to be clear about what are the ways that this person can be accountable to themselves so that they can actually follow through and get these things done that they're making commitments to. So without that structure, we end up with inadequate coaching. Structure really adds focus. It adds clarity. Okay, what do we really want to be working on? What does that person really want? And how are we going to get there? And what kind of support is going to be there to make it happen? It really is about focus and clarity. Now, when it comes to health and wellness coaching, one of the real distinctions, I believe, is that when we take a look at a lot of life coaching and we hear about the way, we study the ICF core competencies and all, to me, it starts to sound like they're really assuming that quite often the client just wants to talk about one thing. Like they're focusing mostly on one major desired outcome for that session, even when they're pretty good about, nailing what that might be. Well, in health and wellness coaching, we're usually working on a variety of things to help that person improve their lifestyle and their health and well-being. And we're often looking at very specific behaviors, medical adherence to a treatment plan, expanding the way that they make contact with other people and expanding their connectedness in their life. We're helping them to create a well-life vision, a wellness plan, made up of very specific things that they're going to be doing. So we're often working with a multitude of steps that the person might be taking, a variety of action steps, a variety of goals they're working on to improve different areas of their life. So if you don't have structure, with all of that, you're not going to get very far. And you will have maybe quite a bit of progress in a particular area, but you won't be using a holistic approach anymore. Now, when we're working with clients, like I was saying, we're talking not just about one aspect of their life. We're helping them really improve their way of living so they can be healthy and well for the entire rest of their life. We're talking about behavioral changes and attitudes and so forth that shift, that require someone to be doing this, not just, during the course of a study that was done academically, but, rest of their lives. So life transformation is really what we're talking about. So we really do have to have a very holistic approach. Now, one of the things that really helps clients to understand how coaching works is when we can really express what is the coaching value proposition. I mean, most of us coaches, we're pretty good at telling people what we won't do for them, right? Oh, well, I'm not going to tell you how to eat. I'm not going to tell you how to exercise. You're going to set up your own wellness plan, and I'm going to help you with that. That's a pretty weak value proposition. It's like, okay, so is this pro bono, or do I have to pay you for that? I mean, come on, what are you really saying here? I'm going to be sending you all a handout after this, the Wellness Coaching Value Proposition. And I'd like you to read it. I'd like you to consider creating your own, in your own words, that you can be able to say to somebody. So, who wants to just play with me for a minute and be my client, just for a moment? Anybody? Just throw your hand up and I'll just talk to you. Okay. Don't worry, it won't hurt. Okay, Eric, there you go. Okay, Eric, go ahead and take yourself off mute. Yeah. How are you doing, Eric?
Doing good.
All right. So Eric, if you and I were if you were coming to me inquiring about coaching and wanting to know what I could do for you, I would probably be saying something to you like, so Eric, if you choose to work with me and do some coaching together, what I'm going to be able to do is help you take stock of your wellness to begin with. Take a real good look at your whole life, 360 degrees. Take a look at the strengths that you've got, the assets you've got. Also look at the challenges that you have. And then we're going to help you to identify, what are the areas that you really want to improve in your life? And how are you going to be able to do that? We're going to be able to help you really identify some concrete steps that you can take to improve those areas of your life. And I'm going to help you with tools and methods that can really help you to be clear about what those are and go about setting up the steps to help you accomplish those things. As we do that, we're going to be taking a look at what the challenges are, some of the barriers that are in the way, and helping you discover some ways over, under, around, and through those barriers. And then together, we're going to help you co-create with you a wellness plan that you can be like someone following a map that you can follow to actually get where you want to go. We'll be meeting together regularly so that you can stay on course with that map. We're going to help you find ways that work for you, and you're going to be the one in charge. It'll be your decisions that you're going to be making, but you don't have to do this alone. Instead of climbing a mountain by yourself, we're going to climb the mountain together. So what we want to be able to do is really work together in a way that helps you accomplish your goals and help you get where you want to go. How does that sound?
It sounds good to me.
So finding your own words, finding your own way to say that is what's really important. You have to be able to let people know how coaching works, because part of structure is helping people understand, well, what is it about coaching that works? How is it different from working with a consultant? I mean, most people have been working with consultants all their lives. You go to a medical, practitioner and you consult with them. They take in the information and they make recommendations. And that's what they expect coaches to do. That's what they're used to. So we have to help people see the difference. My good friend Pat Williams, who's one of the founders of the whole International Coach Federation and all, on his answering machine, he says, "You've reached Dr. Pat Williams. Please answer the two most important questions in life. Who are you and what do you want?" Great answering machine message. But really, those are the things that clients are asking. And then they're asking, okay, so how do I get there? I mean, this is what basic structure really is. What else do I need to get there? Well, I need a vision, a well-life vision of what could be possible. Not pie in the sky, not win the lottery and all that kind of, unrealistic stuff. But if I really focus on improving my life and my lifestyle within a reasonable amount of time, how could it be different? How could I be living my life differently? Now, to do this, instead of doing it the same old way all by myself, just get my willpower up and try harder, I need to do this with an ally. I love to talk about coaches as an ally. And then we need a plan for how to get there. Think about it. How many times have you encountered a friend or somebody or a client when you start working with them, and you look at their history of lifestyle improvement, and they may have succeeded at times, but they weren't able to maintain it. And what did they really do to try to make change happen? Usually get really determined, get, a lot of willpower together, and then buy a Nike poster that says, just do it, and go out and just do it, right? Okay. Well, we need more than that. We need an actual plan for how to get there. We're talking about coaching to the gap. This is one of the most central concepts of all coaching, whether it's business coaching, life coaching, health coaching, anything. You start out with getting a real clear idea of where you're at right now. And this is something we often skip over too quickly. Help people to really get clear. What are my strengths? This is that positive psychology approach. What are my assets? What kind of support do I have? And what kind of liabilities are we even talking about? Where are things at? What are in the way? What health challenges do I have? What's my current state of health? Then we've got that well-life vision, okay, of where I want to be. How do we have to get there? Well, what has to change in your life for you to bridge that gap, to attain that well-life vision? And what has to change, and figuring out what you are ready to change, that becomes the areas of your life that you focus on, and that becomes the beginning of that wellness plan. And somebody had their hand up for just a moment. If you need to ask,
I
go ahead
I
and
just had a
pipe
quick
up.
question about trying to avoid sustained talk while doing that, while asking getting the answers to those questions.
Okay. Well, one thing to really understand about MI and so forth is sustained talk is totally normal. You don't want to avoid it. You want to allow them to express it. Okay. And acknowledge it even when you can. Sustained talk is part of the picture. It's part of the natural ambivalence that people have. And so when we're weighing pros and cons, you're going to hear a lot of sustained talk, and then pick up on the change talk as well, and start, exploring that and building on that. But yeah, you're right. Jim Prochaska loved to say, people make the case for why they cannot change. And I'm sure you've heard a lot of it, right, Lisa?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So staying positive on our end
Definitely.
as you move
Yeah.
through
So,
that.
Yeah. So, we're really going to pick up on the change talk when we hear glimmers of it. But we're going to acknowledge that, hey, I'm sure that's really, important for you, or that you found, that you don't really know any other way to relax, or whatever it might be that, the client is saying that is part of that, what we would call sustaining the status quo. Yeah. Yeah. So when we talk about individual sessions, let's get into the real kind of structure, we might say, to get that individual coaching session off to a good start. What do we really need to be looking at here? Well, one of the things that I love to say about the way we start a session, never have assumptions about what you think the client wants to talk about, and don't let what you think they ought to talk about or focus on get in the way. Never assume that your client wants to start where you left off last time. I can't tell you how many recordings I've heard where the very first thing the client, well, probably what's happened is the coach is there and they have reviewed the notes from the last session, right? And they, automatically, say to the client, so Eric, last time you talked about how to tie your shoelaces. Would you like to focus on that today? And pick back up on that? Eric might have no desire at all. Maybe between now and the last time we got together and now, all kinds of things happened in their life. Tying their shoelaces is the last thing they want to talk about. So never assume that you know where your client wants to start. All right. And it's an easy mistake to make. I've encountered that so many times. So that's one assumption to avoid. The other is to assume that your client would benefit from some kind of nice, relaxing, centering exercise. I've heard this so many times where the coach wants to do this, okay, thinks the client needs to do this. They enjoy doing this. Maybe they need it themselves. Maybe that's all true. But what does the client need or want? I mean, we've really got to stay client-centered. Maybe you have a client who would really appreciate that. Maybe their day's been rushing around and they'd like nothing better than to do some deep breathing or imagery or something. It'd be super. But maybe you've got a client that's showing up and they're like, okay, let's get to work. Okay. And you throw a relaxation exercise at them. Come on. Be client-centered about it. Okay. Let's really look at one model anyway for coaching session structure. And this is one that we use in our Real Balance health coach training. So first of all, and believe me, these percentages are very fluid and very approximate. But you do want to start with a little bit of time on just basic connection, a nice social connection of, maybe talking about the weather or, will the Broncos ever win the Super Bowl or whatever works for that client, right? That's okay. That's normal. That normalizes the beginning of a conversation. Then we're usually doing a check-in and review. The client is checking in on previous commitments that they've made, progress that they're trying to accomplish. You're going to be responding to that. You're going to be empathizing with maybe some of the things that didn't go the way they hoped for. You're going to be acknowledging the steps that they've taken and, really, reinforcing some of their progress, all of those kinds of things. The key here, and we're going to be talking about this, we're going to break this down even further, is to not start processing the moment somebody says, here's what I did. It's only natural, for that client to say, well, I said I was going to go walking 5 times last week and I only went out twice. The natural thing is for you to start inquiring, oh, well, what held you back from doing it, 5 times? Now you're processing. You haven't even set up an agenda of how to work together or what to focus on today. So the idea here is to acknowledge it, but don't start processing. The processing happens here and the session agreement happens in this larger part of the coaching time that you have together for that individual session. Get clear about what the agreement is for this session, where you're going to be focusing on, and explore, process, help the person look at, what's going on. How am I holding myself back? What's really helping me make progress? What support do I need? All those great exploratory questions. But then, and this is the key here, have enough time to do next steps. That commitment to action, the takeaway and close, you've got to have at least 1/3 of the coaching session devoted to that. If you don't, you're probably not going to be doing those steps really well. What I see time and time again is the coach and the client have a little connection, they have a brief check-in, and then they process all the way around the circle, all the way up until you're almost out of time. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's right, we're running out of time. We'd better start getting clear about what the commitments are for next week. So you want to just recommit to the same old thing? I mean, I've literally heard sessions like that. And I'm trying to maybe make it a little funny or something here, but it's not funny. Because the real difference in coaching, what makes a difference in behavioral change, is not what happens in the coaching session. It's what happens out there in the rest of the week. It's out there in their real lives. It's when they're out there experimenting, making attempts at changing their behavior, changing their attitudes and beliefs, connecting with people or not, changing behavior. And if you're not set up well for that, if you haven't carefully co-created what are those next steps, if you haven't set up a really good way of setting up accountability, if you don't have the structure and have the time to do that, you're not going to do it as well. So before I jump further, questions, comments, ideas about coaching session structure. And there's flexibility here. Like some people like to create more of the session agreement even before the check-in, or there's a lot of different variations we can do here, but have some kind of structure. Debbie, go right ahead.
Yeah, I was just, what came up for me is that's why it's so important to not have so many things that they want to address at one time, but to kind of hone in on, what's most important for today. And then having that structure for us so that we can almost be like a timekeeper where we make sure that we leave enough time at the end to address what's the next steps. How do you, I mean, my challenge is kind of cutting them off, not really bringing it to a close where you
Yeah.
can say, okay, what are the next things we need to do?
Right. Yeah. And that is tough sometimes. Clients love to process. We love to process. It's especially when it's productive and you're doing good coaching, which I'm sure a lot of you do really great coaching. It's fun. It's fun for the client. It's fun for you. So one thing, but you, like you said, you kind of have this responsibility for what we call the global view in coaching. And the global view is both within that session and also within the structure of the entire coaching, work that you're doing together. So you might be bringing in things from previous sessions that are strengths you noticed maybe 3 sessions ago that they could use now. But you also have that global view in terms of, oh yeah, I'm watching the clock, and boy, we're running out of time. We got to shift gears here. That's where you can do a couple things. One is to, when you have that timekeeping going on and you notice, so, Debbie, we've got about 10 minutes left. How do we want to really be effective in those 10 minutes together? What would be most helpful for you? Okay. And, or some way of making that transition. You can maybe summarize, what's happened so far in the session, maybe do a good summarization of some of the processing, and then say, so how do you want to take this and apply it in your life? That's where we're headed toward next steps. Okay. The other thing is you can kind of teach your clients to be a little better about watching the clock themselves, and one way that you can do that is if you notice a pattern or a trend in the way that you're working together, it can be really effective to have a session where you actually ask the client if it would be okay today if we took a little bit of time to process the process, to kind of review how's our coaching going. And this can be really valuable. In fact, this is one way that you may hang on to a client that might not be happy with what's going on in coaching, and they may drop out of coaching. But if after several sessions, you stop and say, let's take a look at the way we're coaching together. What do you really like about it? Let's start with a positive. What's working for us? And what could be better? What maybe needs to change or improve? And this gives that client that safe opportunity to talk about that. Because, from life experience, unfortunately, the way a lot of people deal with any kind of conflict is to just avoid it. And when clients do that, is that they just don't show anymore. Okay. The current, trendy term is they're ghosting you, right? It isn't just on Facebook anymore. Now it's your client just hasn't shown up. And you can avoid that by having that coaching conversation. It's a courageous conversation, but it can be a really important one. Other questions or ideas? Thank you, Debbie. About coaching structure. I'm going to break it down a little bit further here in a moment. Okay, well, let me go ahead and do that. Well, the International Coaching Federation's core competencies love to talk about coaching competency number 3. And if any of you have gone after your ACC, your associate certified coach with the ICF, you've submitted recordings that have been reviewed. And one thing that you will find is if you don't nail this one, you will not pass. And really, what they're looking at is, first of all, agreements about how we work together as coach and client. The big overall agreements about how we work together, how long our sessions are, how often, all those kinds of things. But the other agreements that are real specific are about the coaching session. And there are two, number 6 and 7 here, where they talk about partnering with the client to identify or reconfirm what they want to accomplish in the session, and then what the client believes they need to address or resolve to achieve what they want to accomplish in this session. So your client says, well, I want to work on being more active. Okay, great. That's terrific. Now, that would hit number 6 here. But what do they need to look at in order to be more active? That's where you want to drill down a little bit with your client and help them to get more specific about it in this particular session, rather than just talking about greater activity level, pretty broad topic. Okay, what aspect of that? What do they need to look at, in order to become more active? It might be, hey, I do a whole lot better when I have a walking buddy, and my walking buddy moved to Timbuktu, and I don't have anybody to walk with. Okay, now we've really got something to go after. How can we help that client, to connect more with people so they can find someone to walk with? That it could be just one of many, possible examples, of course. So that's one aspect of it, is to really get clear, right out of the gate, what do we want to work on today? And it isn't just, I guess what I've seen coaches struggle with sometimes is how to get that session started and get the focus going. I like to call it co-creating the agenda. And to me, it is about like setting up an agenda. Like, let's say that we were a project team of some kind in some company, or even a PTA group that got together, and had to divide up who's going to work on what. We have maybe a project we're working on together, and we all met. And let's say that, whoever's leading it just throws it out there. What are we going to talk about today? And everybody has something to contribute. And just because, perhaps, Celeste or somebody, speaks up first, well, do we just talk about Celeste's topic and go from there? No, of course we don't. We hear Celeste's topic, We take in Eric's, we take in Red's, we take in whoever else. We assemble all that, and then we create an agenda together as a group. We get clear about, okay, who do we need, what do we need to address first? It might not be Celeste just because she was number one. It might actually be Eric's or Red's or somebody else's. So think of it that way. You start out by greeting and connecting, keeping it brief with that small talk. It is helpful. But then let's say we start with a check-in review. You're going to be reporting in, the client's reporting in on what they make commitments to. You're acknowledging their efforts. You're celebrating their wins. But the key here is do not start processing. Like I said, it's so easy to do that. That sounds really important to you. We'll be sure to talk about that today. What else? Keep gathering it all in. All right. So inquire about what else the client wants to focus on. Again, hold back on the processing. Gather them in. And here's the other thing, and I'm a little bit different than maybe the ICF and some coaches here, but I think you are part of the in the co-creation. Okay. That means, let's say that your client, did not mention that they wanted to talk about the results of their biopsy, the results of their MRI, or something else that was really important. You might want to bring that up and inquire, or, ask them about something like that. Or maybe they haven't done much on their wellness plan, and you might, say, and, you're going to be putting it to them as a question rather than this is what we're going to do. We haven't done much work on your wellness plan. Would you like to spend some time working further on that today? So together, the two of you co-created, you weave together an agenda. What's going to be the order of priority that we're going to work on together, and where do we go from there? Then finally, we can start processing. Now we get to the fun part, right? Okay, cool. So we've got an agenda now. We know where to start. And the whole thing now is to be the facilitator of your client's work, not to do it for them, but to facilitate their work. So be centered, be grounded. And I love to remind people of this old Japanese samurai saying, expect nothing, be prepared for anything, because you don't know what's going to come up. And one of the things that we want to help the client do in the processing is shift from just reporting about what I did to exploring. I like to think of it as, instead of just hearing about another walk around the block, let's go to brand new lands. Let's go someplace really new. Let's really explore, get that client questioning, how can I, make progress here? What's holding me back? What else do I need? Get them infected with curiosity about themselves. Really, really get them, into that wondering stage. And then it's so much about co-creating a wellness plan. They need a map to help them get where they want to go. Without some kind of plan forward, you're just going to be talking about this topic today, this topic tomorrow. This is a really key part of it. And once you've got that map or plan, it's amazing how it works for you. Take the time to do this and do it well. Don't try to do it in the first session. You need to work together to help that client get more acquainted with who they are and what they want. But once you've got a map or plan, you've got the default structure of the coaching process. You're always returning to, where are we at on the map? And what next steps do we need to take? Leave enough time for next steps. Like I said, about 1/3 of the session, to move on to that. And this is so important because the magic really is outside the coaching session. Take time to do it and do it well. Take time for clear agreements and accountability. That's the other thing that's so important here. And together, what you might want to do as you're working toward the end there is have your client summarize their commitments. Don't just tell them what they committed to. You're kind of testing to see that they understand it, that they're clear about it themselves, they feel good about it, and they're ready to do those things. Then it's takeaways. What did the client learn during that session? Acknowledge people's progress and acknowledge their character. Acknowledge what showed up, what they learned, and this is really an opportunity to reinforce some of that progress. So wrap it up, verify the next appointment time. Now, the other aspect of all this, of course, structure is your friend, but never make it your master. We're always talking in coaching about dancing in the moment. What does that really mean? Well, things happen. Don't expect the unexpected, but be ready for it. Your client you might have this great agenda, but you need to just trash it because something comes up. You may have a client who has a profound insight. Maybe they get in touch with something really important, something very, very emotional. Who knows what emerges, right? And maybe, there's a new priority now to focus on. You need to be able to be flexible. You need to be able to maintain that flexibility. Maybe not as great as this good old gal, but, hopefully you can adjust your client. You're adjusting your coaching to the client, not the other way around. For one thing, your client may show up, with a change in their health status. Maybe it's difficult for them to focus today. Maybe they've gone through, some kind of therapy or treatment that's really made it difficult for them. Also, the other thing to adjust to is what we call the behavioral change IQ of your client. Not everybody is as clear about how to change behavior. The same thing that James Prochaska loved to say was, we want to help our clients improve their behavioral change IQ. And a lot of the way we adjust is by being either more directive or less directive, keeping it client-centered. And I write a lot about that in my book, Masterful Health and Wellness Coaching. But you're going to use a different approach depending on your client. If you've got that client that's very highly motivated, maybe some high needs for control, maybe high ability, you're going to be pretty darn non-directive. But you've got another client that's never tried to, successfully make these changes before. They don't know that much about how this process works. Maybe they don't have much experience. They need more education. And maybe their motivation is low. You're going to be a lot more directive with that client. So, like I say, adjust the way that you even have structure as well as your coaching to your client. Your own style is going to vary, and you can have a more directive style, a less directive style, and still do a lot of great coaching. But you don't want to be at the extremes. Totally non-directive, you're not providing much value. Too directive, you're no longer coaching, you're consulting now. So have your own style, be your own person. You're doing your best when you're coaching just the way you are, who you are, but coach. That's the thing. Okay, let's jump in to do the coaching demo, and let's go ahead then and do some work with that. And Celeste, you were ready to roll with that, right?
Yes.
Okay, so as I do that, I'd love to have everybody else just notice, what am I doing as a coach, more than trying to just jump in and coach Celeste yourself in your own thinking. So if we could have everybody else just kind of kill your video for a moment, so just Celeste and I are visible, then we can kind of concentrate on each other here. And so Celeste, in just a very short amount of time here, when the words you used was self-care, and it was related to getting back to coaching the way you would really like to coach. How do you see those two connected together?
I pride myself on not just telling someone not telling someone what to do, but I believe in also being a good student, right? A good leader, in that I do engage in good practices. And I have found myself not engaging
Mm,
in practices that I think tend to take care of ourselves. I got a little off track about a
uh,
year and a half ago, and I've really been trying to get back into it. And it's
yeah.
made me not so confident in my coaching.
Wow. So this has really had, sounds like a pretty profound effect. Uh,
Yeah.
any feeling less confident in your coaching? Would it be a stretch to use the word maybe questioning your own integrity about health and wellness coaching?
Yeah. That that feels like a fit.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So you'd like to really be kind of walking your talk, and you mentioned
Yes.
the word leadership, kind of feeling,
Yes.
okay, if I'm coaching people, I don't have to be perfect, but I have to feel like I'm engaged in this process of being healthy and well.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So what could be something that we could focus on around, you mentioned self-care. What would be something that we'd like to explore about your own self-care? What could that look like today?
I am really trying to find some structure. I'm not great at structure,
Mm,
but in just doing something every day, just a little bit, just committing. It's the commitment. I've lost the commitment to my
uh,
self-care. That's what I've lost.
so the structure, the everyday type thing, um, it sounds like you know what to do, the how to be well part. My guess is you could probably write a book on it, right? But doing it, you're kind of looking to some kind of structure that can help it happen on a regular, consistent basis. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So what kind of structure has worked for you in the past?
A flexible one. um, I've always have seemed to have these jobs that my time is not exactly the same all the time.
Uh,
But in the past, I had a very set this day off and this day off.
ah,
And
yeah.
so I was able to really commit to those 2 days. I had a awkward schedule, but it was set. And
Mm,
now
hmm.
I get to something and then something gets thrown in my day that takes me off, and I'm just not managing the everywhere all the time kind of schedules.
So it was a lot easier when things were more predictable. And
Yes.
it sounds like right now, things just show up, they come out of left field, they just emerge in front of you, and they get in the way of you planning any self-care activity.
I
Or at
think
least
it's
that
not that
happens frequently.
I don't even think things were more predictable, but I felt like I didn't have as much in my basket.
Ah, okay.
Like I just feel now that there's so many things in the basket to do
Ah, okay.
that
So would you say that now what's emerging is more uh, looking at ways that you can manage what goes into this basket and what doesn't,
yes,
to kind of protect some self-care time?
yes.
Yeah. Otherwise, it gets filled up with all this stuff to do,
Hmm.
and there's nothing left for you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of that's how life's been here lately, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so we're kind of seeing one thing related to another. It isn't just, oh, self-care is a good thing. Yes, I know I need to do it. Um, but rather it's how on earth I'm going to find any time to do it
Yeah.
when I have so many things wanting to jump into this basket of mine. Yeah.
So many
So,
important things, it seems.
yeah. Yeah. So, um, what's kind of helped you sort out what's important versus what's urgent in the past?
Sometimes I think I don't know if I'd say a deadline, but maybe what would happen if I didn't do these things versus what would happen if I didn't do those. I don't think I've ever had this much in my basket to do
Mm.
at one time. I was a mom. Things were very mom centered and a little bit of work.
Mhm.
And I'm supposed to be an empty nester, but I feel like the time got filled up with a lot more of work.
Mm.
And
Okay.
so it's
Yeah.
not clear to me which one is more or less important. Where before, okay, I know where my children stand, I know where I stand. I don't know where
Right.
all the different aspects of work stand to what
Yeah.
I can go.
Okay. So if we take a look, and you know, I'm very aware of how little time we have together today, but like I said, I'd like this to kind of be a springboard for a couple more sessions that we could do together. So we don't have to get everything all figured out today. We don't have to
Okay.
get everything all wrapped up with a pretty bow on it here, you know, in time to process this coaching. But I think what you've done is you've really clarified something around um, self-care and the time for it, and this whole idea of things kind of, you know, crowding into this basket. You know, so many important things. So what could we focus on in our next session that could help you to maybe start winnowing this down or getting more clear about what goes into that basket and what the
Maybe some
process.
goals on what is the goal? Like what should I be spending what is the goal if my integrity comes out of self-care and my goal is to coach again, that then puts my self-care kind of at the top of the rung as opposed maybe some other things that aren't going
Mhm.
to get me toward that being comfortable in coaching again. Because
Yeah. So let's after this, my email is michael@realbalance.com, as you
okay,
probably know. Let's arrange an appointment after this, okay?
okay.
And between now and the time we get together for that appointment, what's maybe one quick idea that you might have about what you could gather in to look at this concept of this? Can we keep using the metaphor of a basket? Does that work for you?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Maybe exploring how do things get into that basket? Is it magic, or is there some kind of process here where they get into that basket? Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Celeste. We'll do that.
You're welcome. I'll email you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, everybody. So real quick comment or two just on the coaching. What did you notice in terms of the topic of structure that I was using a little bit there, even in a 10-minute demo? Any observations? Any ideas about or noticings, observations about structure? Yeah, Debbie, go ahead.
Well, I noticed a lot of
Go ahead.
acknowledgement. You got her to drill down for clarity, and it really came out with a whole different way to navigate based on how you start it as where you end it in terms of her time management. And did a great job in terms of constantly
Mhm.
summarizing and confirming, is this what you meant? So you had a very good flow to it that
Mhm.
it seems so natural. Of course it's natural. You do this for how many years?
Oh, golly, I can't even count them now. But yeah, thank you, Debbie. I really appreciate that. Yeah, so you know, a lot of what we're doing is you know, really acknowledging our clients You know, people don't give themselves credit for what they are doing. I'm continually saying that, and it's so true. So I want to acknowledge all of you for being here this time, and be with us again next month, May 12th, on that Monday. We're going to be talking about the idea of transformation. You know, sometimes we do our coaching just about behavior change, but you know, if somebody finishes up coaching with you and they say, wow, I'm a whole new person now. I care about myself. I care about my health and wellness. I'm really somebody who cares now. I'm somebody different. So please stay in touch. There's my email right there. There's our phone number. Please stay in touch with any questions you've got. I'm going to be sending all of you that wellness value proposition. And something I always love to do is start on time and end on time. I want to respect that all of you have got busy lives and want to move on with your next thing. So thank you all very much for being here, and we'll see you next month. Thanks again. Take care. Coach on.